Sounds like there's some people in here who know.
Okay. That's right. Yeah. Oh, Lord. Yes. Tell me about
Have experienced his way-making ability.
Yeah. Yes,
because he knows how to make a way.
Oh, my goodness. Back against the wall.
Yes, Lord. Yes.
Oh, my.
Back against the wall.
Yes. Which way?
I think the songwriter said, and it looked as if it was over. Oh, man, then God did something.
Oh, yeah.
Amen.
Oh, boy, it came out of space.
Hallelujah.
Man.
Oh, yeah, I'm telling you.
Yes. Think about how good God is. Lord Jesus. We want to use this thought today about let go of worry. Let go of worry. Let go of worry. Let us pray. God, thank you so much that you love us in spite of us. In spite of our faults, our failures, our frailties. You still love us, God, and we thank you so much for that. God, we are grateful that you've allowed us to assemble today, and we don't take it for granted. So as we have come today, God, and we've shared and opened our hearts to you, God, we pray that you would deposit something in us, that you would place something in us today that would help us with tomorrow. Help us, God, so that we could be better as the week unveils and as we have situations and life experiences that we will face. God, help us to not worry. Help us learn how to let go of worrying and placing our faith and our trust and all of our belief in you. God, we ask that you would use your word to encourage us and empower us as we pull a page out of Paul's life. We ask that you speak to us, that you would arrest our attention, that you would challenge us and stretch us and help us to be better. God, we ask that you would forgive me of my sins and my transgressions and allow me just the opportunity again to be an instrument at your disposal and to your glory and honor. This we ask in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen. Let go of worry. Let go of worry. Everyone worries from time to time. But for some people like me, worry can become a way of life. I wish I could stand before you and say today that I've never worried about anything. I wish that I could say that in all these years of life experience and walking with God, that there has never been a time that I didn't worry about something. Worrying can be a part of life, but too much worrying can produce some negative experiences in life. Yeah. See, too much worry can produce anxiety, and it can paralyze productivity. Yeah. If we worry too much, we can lose problem-solving ability, because what we chose to do rather than solve the problem is worry about the problem. Worrying can cause problems in one's health and in their relationships. Because worrying, simply put, worrying is this. Worrying is, how can I say it? It's preparing to be upset or angry. Some of y'all caught that, and some didn't. Worrying is this. It's preparing yourself to be upset or angry about something because you're making the assumption that things won't work out in the future. So it's actually a preliminary experience. It's an experience that we prepare and that we cause ourselves to have because we think that something is coming later on that we won't be able to work out. And most worriers have worries that are centered around some of the same areas. Most worriers worry about health, employment, finances, relationships, be it family and friends. For instance, some of us won't go to the doctor
All right, Pastor, say something.
because we are worried that when we get there, they're going to find something wrong. My doctor always tells me, she says, you know what, Squire, you must not have been able to bear the discomfort or pain any longer. And that's why you're here. Because worrying about our health can cause us not to have routine checkups, not to see our physicians on a regular basis because we're worrying that they're going to find something. Worrying has a way of even creeping into our finances. I don't know if you've ever been there where maybe you knew that which was going out was going to exceed that which was coming in as far as finances are concerned, and therefore you found yourself worrying about whether or not I will be able to make ends meet.
Come on.
All right.
Worrying has the capacity to even creep up in parenting. Parents, those of us who have children, know something about worrying.
Yeah.
Because through every stage of development of a child, we can find ourselves worrying with different worries in each stage. We worry when they're newborns. Well, when we send them to daycare, is the daycare provider going to take care of them? Will they be attentive to them when they get in school? We worry about whether or not people will bully them, or will they make the proper friends, or we worry about whether or not they'll get the grades that reflect their ability. And even when they get older, we still find ourselves worrying about whether or not they went out tonight. Will they make it home tonight? Worrying creates stress, and it usually has a negative impact upon our lives. And you know what I found is that underneath worry are actually some deeper feelings that very often we just don't want to deal with them.
All right, guys. Come on.
Yeah. When you pull rather than deal with the fear that I may possess, rather than deal with the hurt or the anger that I might be harboring, we like to push those to the side and ignore those, and then what happens is we worry. Because worrying is that superficial feeling that is actually covering up some deeper feelings and some deeper issues. And if we would learn how to deal with and face the deeper issues, and learn how to deal with those and face those, and learn how to properly respond to those, we won't waste so much time worrying. That's Paul pens this admonishment to the church at Philippi, and it sounds like he's saying to them, look, just stop worrying. So stop it, because it doesn't profit anything. And what he wants them to do is take a deep dive and deal with their emotions. Because worrying keeps us here where there are other underlying feelings beneath here that we have to learn how to come to terms with those and face those and appropriately deal with those. So he says to them, be anxious for nothing. He says, stop worrying. Here a man who is in prison is telling those that are in church to stop worrying. Here a man who's incarcerated does not have the freedom to come and go as he pleases, is writing to them and sharing with them some very important admonishments, and he admonishes them to stop worrying. And stop allowing anxiety to control your life. So then how does he share that you let this thing go? How do you get to a space and a place where you are able to let it go? Not that you don't have concern, but that you do not allow worry to become a way of life. He shares with them some interesting ways to let this stuff, to let it go. Because I don't know if your mom has ever told you this before, but I can remember growing up, Mama would always tell me, look, 95% of the stuff you worrying about ain't ever gonna happen. And in essence, what she was saying is, I didn't get it then, but in essence what she was saying is stop exercising this thing called worry, because it's not profitable. And what Paul wants them to understand is that there's a way to let go of anxiety and of worries. He wants them to understand that there's a way that you can deal with it and do it and not allow it to become a way of life. And the first thing one of the first things he shares with them is that you let go of worry by learning how to celebrate God. He hits them with this. He hits them with celebration. Look, that you have to learn in life to celebrate. So many of us focus on what doesn't happen and miss all this good stuff that's been happening. I mean, if we were to be honest with ourselves, human nature, human behavior causes us to focus on that which is not, rather 4 and 5, now remember, dude's in prison. And he says, rejoice in the Lord always. And check this out. He says, look, I'm going to say it again. Rejoice. Let your gentleness be evident to all. And this is what he said to him, because the Lord is near.
Yeah.
What he wants them to understand is that you end up letting go of anxiety and let go of worry by celebrating who God is.
Yeah.
See, let me see, how can I say it? We're human beings, right? With us.
All right.
When you remove something from us, you have to replace it with something else.
All right. Yeah.
See, even those that experience addictions and are in recovery and sobriety, they understand that which was my drug of choice that I used in order to cope, I have to replace that with something else.
Yeah.
So what Paul wants them to understand is that rather than experience all of this aggravation, he wants them to celebrate God. See, when you begin your day with celebration rather than worry, see, some of us wake up in the morning already worrying about what's going to happen. The day ain't even happened yet. I mean, come on. Some of us wake up in the morning already thinking about that crazy coworker, and we ain't even got to work yet. We don't even know if they gonna call out today. We don't even know if they are alive today. But yet, we wake up focused on our mind, focused already on what could happen today, and the day ain't even happened yet.
All right, take so Pastor.
One of the things I'm practicing is that before I get out of the bed, celebrate him.
All right. Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? Before I even ask him to fix anything that I think might be broken. Because a lot of times we do that too. We wake up sending God on errands already. Go do this and go do that and go and it's like, well, I know God doesn't use language like that, but like, say hello. At least. I mean, good morning or something. But yet you're sending me on missions already. But if we would take the time to just celebrate who he is.
Yes, Pastor.
Paul says, rejoice in, now he says, always. Here's a man who's in prison and is still writing about rejoicing and celebrating God, because here's what happens when you begin to celebrate who he is. When you come to consciousness and begin to understand who he is, what you have to deal with has to submit to who he is. See, when I begin my day waking up and thanking him for being the creator, understanding that everything that there is has to bow down to him. Don't you know that those people I work with got to bow down to him? Those people that are driving on the road while I'm driving, they got to bow down to him. Don't you know that there's no problem, no situation, no circumstance that will not be dealt with himself that he's the provider.
Yes.
Guess what? When I'm celebrating him, when I make it a practice that I just talk to him about who he is. When I get up in the morning with that on my mind, then I understand. Listen, I understand who I'm hanging with all day long.
Yeah.
See, the problem at times with a lot of our praying is that there's less celebration and there's more like assigning God to go do stuff
Petitioning, yeah.
rather than just basking in who he is.
That's right.
And recognizing who he is and how he kept me as I was sleeping and slumbering, and how he regulated my body temperature so that I didn't wake up with some sort of infection, or the billions of microorganisms that are in the world that I can't even see, how he kept those from infecting my body and allowed me to wake up in my right mind so that I could start my day and wake up understanding and seeing family and friends and having a place to put food, having a table to put food on it. And even if I'm running out and things are low, being able to experience less is a blessing, because I understand how much more actually means. So when I begin to celebrate him, that consumes my mind, who he is and who I'm walking with today. So then whatever it is that I have to deal with, or whatever comes my way, I know that I'm with someone bigger than me.
Yes.
I'm with someone who's stronger than me, and my mind has been fixed that way, that I understand that he's greater than me. So whatever it is that comes against me, he's got me.
That's right. Thank you, God.
So he wants them to understand that it's celebration, that when we celebrate him, that can take place and help us let go of worrying. But also, he mentioned something to the church that I think is critical for all of us, is that not only celebration, but our habit formation. What it is that we have allowed to become habitual in our lives will help determine whether we worry or whether we can face whatever the feelings are. Because Paul wants them to form some habits that he lays out in verses 6 and 7, where he says to them, don't be anxious. Do not be anxious about anything. But here's the habits formation that he wants them to pick up. In every situation, pray by prayer and petition. And he says, with thanksgiving, in other words, be thankful. And then he says, present your requests to God. And this is what he tells them the results will be, that the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, check this out, it'll guard your heart and your mind. I mean, look at what he says. He says, look, if you form these habits of praying and petitioning God and being thankful to God and letting your requests be known to God. Yeah. He said, this is how you will set yourself up. Yeah. If you form these habits, then the peace of God, these will be the results of the habits you form. See, our habits have on the results in our lives. He says, and the peace of God, which transcends all understanding. Check out, this is what it'll do. It'll guard your heart and your mind. In other words, you'll be totally covered. Your mind and your heart will be covered, and it will be guarded with peace if you form some habits.
Yeah.
That if rather than me ignoring the deeper feelings, if it's fear, call it fear. But if I pray and petition God to help me deal with my fears.
All right, Pastor.
If it's guilt, face the guilt. But petition God to help me deal with those feelings so that I can articulate what it is and appropriately face them and deal with them. See, it's not that life, that we will not experience fear, that we will not experience being scared, and that we will not experience being hurt and anger. It's what we do with it.
Yeah.
See, what worrying does is mask what's going on down here.
That's right. That's right.
And what he wants them to understand is that, look, if you form these habits, God will deal with the peace of God, right, which people cannot even understand.
That's right.
It'll guard your heart and your mind. In other words, we set ourselves up for success or struggle by the habits that we form. Habit formation, that if I don't deal with life's issues by going to God, I set myself up for failure. Listen, he says, don't be anxious about anything. Don't worry. He's not saying don't be concerned. He's not saying that there will not be fear and there will not be hurt and anger and all. He said, but in every situation, form these habits. Pray. Be thankful. And let your requests be made known to God. And it'll guard your heart. And it'll guard your mind.
Thank you, God. Thank you, God.
Because you see, we've got to learn how to let go. Now, we got to learn how to let go of worrying. By celebration, by habit formation. And here's the last thing, and I think really important, as equally as important as the other two, because celebration and habit formation are critical. But the last thing he says is meditation. This is where the battle takes place. The enemy knows if I get this, I got all this.
All right.
See, it's like, if I have this, I can control all of that. But I have to have this. So what Paul wants them to understand is that the things we think about and meditate on,
all right,
very often those are the things that begin to drive our responses and drive our reaction.
Yeah.
So let's look at what he says that we ought to be thinking about. He says, finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything, this out. If anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about those things.
Yes. Thank you, Lord. Yes.
And then look at what he says in verse 9. He says, whatever you have learned or received or heard from me or seen in me, put it into practice, and the God of peace will be with you. He's trying to set them up to be successful.
Yeah.
And learn how to let go of worrying through meditation. Those things that we think about, those things that we allow to occupy space in our minds. He says, whatever is true, noble, right, pure, lovely, admirable. And then he says, look, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, these are the things that you ought to meditate on.
Yeah.
These are the things that you ought to think about.
Yeah.
And then he qualifies it by saying, look, watch what, if you've seen me do it, do what I did.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. Yeah. Mm.
See, the things that we allow to occupy space in our mind, very often we'll think ourselves out of. Yeah, very, very often we will allow ourselves to think and talk ourselves out of what God's going to do in our lives.
Oh, say so, Pastor.
Because we're thinking the wrong stuff. And we're meditating on the wrong things rather than those things that are true, noble, right, pure, and lovely, and excellent, and praiseworthy. No, we're thinking about the worst.
Yes.
We're thinking, you know how our minds can get.
Yes.
You know how we can think ourselves to a place where things have not even happened yet, but we've started to think the worst already.
All right.
You know how something happens, we start already thinking the worst. Almost immediately, our minds can take us to the worst possible scenario rather than thinking on what is true and noble and right and pure and excellent and praiseworthy. We will begin to think the worst. And then because we thought the worst, we start reacting that way and responding that way, all because of what we were thinking. This I'm through. Pam was away this week, right? And she was in South Carolina working and stuff, and I'm home all week by myself. That's dangerous in itself. That in itself is dangerous, not because I don't do anything crazy or anything like that, but I just know that I'm not going to eat right when she's around, right? So Tuesday, it was either Tuesday or Wednesday, one of those days, I have this major emergency crisis in my life, right? It's a serious crisis to me, maybe not to some of y'all, but to me, it's a major crisis. What happens is I'm getting ready for bed, right, and brushing my teeth and flossing my teeth, and I have a crown on a tooth back here, and the crown came out. It just kind of broke off because the foundation of the tooth has broken, and it could not any longer hold the cemented crown to it, right? So it popped out, and I'm like, oh shoot, right? So I save it, right? And I put it in a little plastic bag. At first I try and maneuver it back in my mouth because, I'm going to try stuff, right? I tried, but it didn't really work out. It started bleeding a little bit. My gums started bleeding a little bit. And I was like, okay, let's not do this any longer. All right, so I'm getting ready to call Pam, at night to say goodnight and all that other stuff and get ready to go to bed. But I didn't tell her about it. I didn't tell her, right, because I really didn't want her to worry. And then start thinking she can't leave me home By myself. Right? I'm still at the stage where I'm proving that I can stay home alone, right, and everything still be fine. What I will do though is when the day that I know she's coming back, I start washing the dishes, cleaning up everything, right, and stuff, so that when she comes back, everything is in place. So here, I don't tell her about it, right, because I don't want her to worry. So I talk to her every morning on the way to work, because she goes to work before I go to work. So I tell her in the morning, right, what happened. Now, I tell her in the morning because by this point, I'm like full of anxiety. Because I had to sleep all night, right, with knowing that the crown on a tooth back here, number 2, I think it is, that the crown came off. Now, this is what I did, because this is sometimes how our minds work. I had already given myself tooth cancer. Right? I don't even know if there is such a thing. But I'm like, oh my God, oh no, I'm gonna have cancer of the tooth. Right? Then, no, get this. Right? Then I'm trying to figure out, okay, how should I sleep in the bed? Should I lay on this side? If I lay on that side, maybe the poison might draw. I'm like, poison might drip out of the tooth or whatever, and then I might swallow that, and then I might choke in my sleep. Right? I've built all these different scenarios in my mind. Right? That, oh my God, I'm not going to see my kids anymore. I'm already there. So by like 6:30 in the morning, 6:40, I didn't even sleep that night. Right? Because the crown came off. That's all, because the crown came off, and because I started thinking the worst. So I tell her in the morning, and she's like, well, what you gonna do? I'm like, well, I'm gonna call the dentist at work this morning and see what will happen, what will be the results, what can, will I have to have radiation, anything? So I'm just like, I'm gonna call them. So I call the dentist, right? I call the dentist office, and they said, okay, so all we need to do is just re-cement it. You just come on in. So the lady says, the people sit at the desk. She's like, all right, she's like, do you want to come in today? I'm like, today? I'm like, well, I'm at work. She's like, you can't leave work? I'm like, so I said, well, when do you have another appointment? She's like, well, we have one 2 weeks from now. I'm thinking. I could get in there, right? I could get in there in 2 weeks. So I told her, I said, look, let me call you back. She's like, look, Mr. Newsome, I'm going to put you in for today. Because you need to come in today and get it. All we have to do is re-cement it back onto your tooth, and you should be fine, right? So I'm like, okay, let me just see if I can get someone to cover classes for me and do this and then be able to leave. So I end up leaving, and I go to the dentist office, right? And I have like a 2 o'clock appointment. I get there, right? And so, I don't know why they do this, but to me, it is just totally, in my mind, it's unprofessional. She asked me, how you doing? I'm like, I'm at the dentist office. How am I doing? I'm like, why even ask something like, don't ask that kind of question. I'm at the dentist office. So I'm talking to the dentist, and she looked like she could be my daughter, right? I'm like, so then I'm having issues with that. Because like, did you really go to dental school? She's like, where'd you go? She's like, well, I went to Howard. I was like, okay. I wanted to ask her how old she was because she looked rather young and stuff, but I'm like, okay, explain to me what has to happen. She's like, okay, we're going to take some x-rays, blah, blah, blah. So then she comes back, look, after looking at the x-rays, Mr. Newsome, listen, this is what we can do for you today for a temporary fix. We can re-cement the crown back on the tooth, but we're going to have to extract that tooth.
Oh.
Then here come the cancer thoughts. Wait a minute. What if it's fatal? See, and I'm like captive to my thoughts. Right? Captive to my thoughts. What Paul says is make sure that your thoughts are pure. Make sure that you think about that thing that is excellent and praiseworthy. Because so many of us get captive to our thoughts. And if you're thinking the wrong thing, guess what? You'll run yourself crazy. And you'll have so much anxiety and so much worry. But if you think about who he is and all that he has done and how he brought you through the last situation and how he brought you around the last problem and how he fixed the last circumstance, and if you begin thinking about who he is and his track record, then you begin to muster up enough courage and enough stamina to stand tall no matter what it is that you're facing, no matter what it is that you have to deal with. You understand that I don't have to worry about it because I'm in somebody's hands that are stronger than my hands. I'm in the hands of the one that's created me, the one that has shaped me and formed me, the one that blesses me, the one that keeps me. When I understand that,
Thank you, Lord. Yes.
then I don't have to worry.
Yes. That's it.
Because see, worrying is preparing myself to be upset.
Yes.
That's what it is.
Yes.
Not that we don't have concern, but we face those, right? And we face them understanding who he is as I'm facing them. So Paul says you can let go of the worry. He's like, don't be anxious.
Yeah.
The Message Bible says, don't worry about anything. In fact, the Message says, celebrate God.
That's right. Celebrate him.
Because when you get caught up in that, no matter what it is that I have to deal with,
Thank you, God.
no matter what it is that I'm facing,
Yes.
I understand who has me.
That's right. That's right.
And then I don't have to worry.
That's right. Thank you,
If
God.
we could just rest on our feet for just a
Thank you, God.
moment.